Good evening, everyone. Welcome to An Academy's UX/UI design webinar, and thank you for deciding to spend time with us today evening. We've all come back from work, and I'm only presuming that you have too. Today, this webinar is led by Prachi Mittal, our head of academics. But before we dive right into Prachi ma'am's presentation, I am Shubhangi, and I would like to talk a little bit about what is it that we do at AND and why do we do it and how do we do it. So AND Academy is a one-of-a-kind design upskilling platform launched by the Indian Institute of Art and Design, which is a brick-and-mortar design school based in New Delhi in Okhla. So IIAD was actually established in collaboration with Kingston School of Art, London, and actually came out as an online arm of IIAD. So and actually comes from a decade of experience in design education. It comes from the design pedigree of IIAD. We offer professional design courses in the domains of graphic design, interior design, and UX/UI design, which is what we will be talking about today. Our courses are designed in a way that they cater to graduates and working professionals from varied backgrounds. So people who may or may not have a background in design can also pursue any of these courses. And our motto is to make design education accessible, affordable, and industry relevant to enable successful career transformations. All of our courses are delivered online in a live interactive manner. So we sort of steer away from the traditional model of learning, and we optimize for accessibility and convenience so that you can learn and work together. So learning doesn't happen in a passive mode where a mentor or a teacher or a professor is speaking to you and you are just like passively listening to whatever they're saying. It is very hands-on. It is very interactive. It's a very interactive sort of a course. It requires much attention and hands-on learning from your end as well. We combine expert mentorship, practical training, and industry exposure to guide you towards a better future in the industry. Today, as I said, this webinar is led by our head of academics, Prachi Mittal. Before I hand it over to Prachi ma'am, I want to introduce her. So Prachi is a designer, educator, and a researcher. She brings 20 plus years of industry and academia experience to the table. Her practice spans the disciplines of product design, social design, publication design, and design management. Her expertise lies in curriculum development, strategic use of pedagogy and technology, and academic processes for design education. A graduate from NIFT, New Delhi, she's also completed a PG certification in higher education from Kingston University, London. So we also have a flow to this webinar. We will be talking about what is UX/UI design, then we'll go through student work and our courses at end, but we'll take the questions at the end of the presentation, at the end of the session. But while the presentation is going on, if you have any questions, I request you to please put it in the Q&A box so that we can answer them at the end of the session very systematically. With that, I hand it over to Prachi ma'am.
Thank you, Shubhangi, and thank you everybody for joining us on a weekday at the end of a long working day. Let's quickly dive into what really UX UI design is, because that's the purpose of today's webinar, for us to get a little bit of clarity about what really UX UI design is, because that term is thrown around, is quite popular these days. It's thrown around often, and in my interactions with aspirants, people who want to be part of the UX UI discipline, I find that there is some fuzziness around its understanding. So the purpose of today's webinar is basically to get a clarity around that, and probably the last 5 minutes will be spent in talking about the courses at AND. But before that, let's get this clear. So on your screen, what you see is statements that I normally hear from people when I ask them that, what do you think UX UI design is? When I ask them to explain it, they tell me about it is about the overall experience, how a user feels, how it looks, is what user interfaces, When I probe them further, they talk a little bit about that we have to do research. Sometimes people tell me that you have to think about which color will people like, or what can make it look better, or it can encourage them, make them feel better, good. You think about adding illustrations and animations so that applications become engaging. People also tell me a lot of times that, whenever I use an application, I get ideas that this is how it should be, this is what it can be. And if those changes happen, then the user experience of it will improve. So people bring in all of these things when I ask them about it. And while none of these are wrong, these are incomplete explanations of what UX UI design is. So whenever I have to sort of really clear the air around what a term is, what I like to do is that I like to go back to the good old ways of referring to a dictionary, and I look at the dictionary meaning of the word, and then I try and piece it together into a definition. And that's exactly what I've done on this slide. um, Not very difficult to figure out what user is, but sometimes we have to figure out even the obvious terms, because we think we know, uh, but we're not able to fully talk about the meaning of it, right? So a user is a person who uses or operates something. Fairly simple. What is an experience? When something happens to you, that's an experience. When you are feeling something, when you're doing something, all of that. So listening, watching is also part of doing. Doing is doing. Action with the hands can also be doing. And sometimes if you're just feeling something, you might not be doing, you're experiencing something, and you're experiencing it through your five senses. You are in an experience. But I think what is worth talking about here is the dictionary definition of design. It is to plan or make something with a specific purpose in mind. Because this word also gets thrown around very loosely. We talk of design even as a motif on, so there is a design on my dress, that is also referred to as design. But actually in the professional space, what is the meaning of the word design is that when you plan or make something with a specific purpose in mind. And it is unfortunate that sometimes it gets it replaces words like motifs, right? So let's keep these three words and these definitions in our mind. And if I piece them together, this is the definition of UX design, that it is an intentional process. The definition of design tells us this, that you plan, there is an intention behind that planning of creating a product or a service or an environment which you are going to experience that addresses the specific needs of its users or operators. So there are specific needs that we are addressing, and it is intended to address those specific needs. So I don't just go about creating something, but I am actively, proactively thinking about and working with the specific needs of operators in a way that it stimulates, it brings about an intended response. So if I want the operators to react to what I am giving them in a certain way, and I'm designing around that, that's when it becomes design. Otherwise it's an accident, otherwise it is many other things you might be creating, but design is when you bring that intention behind it. So everything that you do to create this experience becomes informed by this intention of getting specific responses from your users through whatever you are providing them, right? And then what is the interface? Again, going back to the dictionary meaning, the interface simply is a surface. It is that interface, the plane through which two systems interact. So right now, you and I are interacting through this interface of Zoom, right? I'm one system. I'm here. I'm the one who's speaking. I'm the one who's sharing something with you visually, and you're the ones who are taking it in. The interface for us is this Zoom screen through which we are interacting, and that is the true definition of interface. Therefore, if I am operating a remote, the surface of that remote becomes my interface. Sorry. When I work on a website, or when I interact with a application, if I'm using it through my phone screen, then that becomes my interface, right? But that interface, therefore, becomes the vehicle on which the experience is carried, right? Is therefore user interface about making something beautiful or attractive, just to make the user feel good so that they have a good experience? Then can we say this, right? Does anybody want to answer that question for me in the chat? Yes, no, something. And anybody, would you like to just answer for me? Do you think it is just a yes or no would be sufficient for me? Do you think it is about making something beautiful so that our users can feel good about it, or the experience becomes good? I'm not getting any responses. Then maybe you, yes. So Nikita says yes. Avantika says yes. Preeti says no. Okay, that's enough for me to go on. It's actually not. It's not, because if I go back to my previous slide, can a beautiful remote make it easy for me? It can make me feel good because I'm looking at a beautiful piece of surface. But what if I'm still struggling to figure out how to increase the volume? Or if I want to, my TV has this feature where it will adapt its brightness to um, to suit the ambient lighting in my room. It has this feature, and I want to now switch it on. How can I switch it on? I'm going to switch it on through my remote, and if that remote, through the screen of my TV, whatever it is showing me. Now, if it is difficult for me to locate which one should I press so that I can activate this feature, my remote can look beautiful, it can look minimal, or it can look whatever. It can look beautiful, but if it makes me struggle to access this feature, to get it operational, I'm not going to feel good about it. I'm actually going to feel frustrated, right? So therefore, user interface becomes, the purpose becomes of creating effective communication, not beautiful communication, but effective communication that makes this interaction easy and compelling, right? If I want to now change my background, I'm interacting with you and something disturbing is happening, something distracting is happening in my background, I want to change it. Zoom has that feature, but I struggle to figure out how to activate that feature. Or when I do it, I press on something, but something else happens, right? Or it is just very difficult for me to figure out how to do it. And I need to refer to a manual, or I need to ask somebody who knows how to do it. Can you guide me how to do it? Right? That is when the interface design fails. Okay. So the two are correlated, but it is important to remember that it is not, the visual design is not only about making things attractive or beautiful. It is about, like some of you have said, about making it simple to operate, right? Or easy to operate. Now, the next thing that I want to mention is that UX UI design is not only about digital products. It is also about what we call as analog products, which are the non-digital products. So, for example, the experience of using like the remote, which is an analog action that I take, it's not digital. Or being in the airport, when I get down from the aircraft, I might want to visit the washroom, or I might want to find out where the taxi is, or I might want to figure out where the baggage is. And now, as a UX designer designing the experience of the airport, you might think that that is the job of architects and interior designers or space designers. No, that is also the job. Of course, the architects will be involved, but an UX designer, for them to figure out that where should be, what should we prioritize, or these are the 3 or 4 ways, things that people might want to do at this time. Where do I put my signage? How do I put my signage? What priority should my signage be? What do they want to know? What are the information they are seeking? And how can I provide them that information without putting many people whom I can ask, right? So UX design is also about the analog experiences. In the airport example, the UI will be the, if I put up a kiosk which becomes interactive, through which I can figure out whatever information I need, or I have signages which give me that information, that becomes my interface. And that signage may not be go here, go there. It may also be, if some of you have been on metro stations, the colored footprints, that okay, follow this, follow the pink if you want to go to the baggage, follow the red if you want to go to cab or whatever. That's also a interface design, right? So UX expands to digital and non-digital products, but and we only talk about in the because it's a part-time course and a short course. We only talk about the digital experiences. But good for you to know that the domain of UX UI goes beyond digital, right? Now, why do we need to call it UX? Why can't it just be architecture and product design or graphic design? Because that signage can be designed by graphic designers, that airport space can be designed by architects, or in the case of digital products, a graphic designer can also design that what do you see on the screen, and the technologists or the techies will bring in the software behind it. Why can't it, why do we need another terminology like UX UI, right? So yes, UX UI does overlap with all of these, whether it is product design, graphic design, communication design, so on and so forth. But the term came at a time when the digital revolution was happening, when a lot of products transitioned from being mechanical to technology based. A lot of techies started designing products. So for example, very like when it just started and automation and digitization happened, and earlier when you had to book your, let's say, a train ticket, or you would go to to a place physically, they will book it for you, and they would use ledgers to book it. Then one step forward, they had a computer, on that they had to go and book the ticket, right? So that everything could get integrated. So even though as you as an end user were not doing it, the people at the counter, they started using digital spaces or platforms to book tickets for you and keep their accounts. Or in banks, you would have encountered earlier, you had to go and everything was done manually or physically, and then the banks started having all these interfaces and applications through which they could manage. And all of this was happening along with the software revolution. uh, but what was happening was that engineers were designing it, and they were taking a technology first approach. So what is possible through software, let's design a software for that. And they designed that, and then they give it to the users, the person sitting behind the bank counter, the person sitting behind the railway ticket booking counter. And what happened was that the software was in place, but now these people were struggling to use it. And it is not because they were not trained to use it, but the way it was designed, the interface of it, and the way they had thought about कि अच्छा, when somebody's trying to book a ticket, at that time that the customer is going to ask what are my options. Now it was very difficult for the person sitting over here to find out options. They had to get out. They were like, no, you figure it out, go to that place, all options are displayed there, you figure out which ticket you want to book, then you come to us, then I will book the ticket, right? Because I don't have a way, because if I start booking a ticket now, I don't have way to check and tell you what are the options. Now this was becoming complex. So the idea of putting people first had to come in, that you have to think about the users, the humans first, and not the technology first. That is how the birth of the profession or the discipline of UX UI design happened. I want to explain this using a very quick example of and this is a real story that unfolds on the platforms, railway platforms of Japan. Uh, so in Japan, a lot of local commuting happens through trains, metros that we call here, in India, and a lot of people use travel from it. Something very alarming was happening, that there was a very high rate of accidents happening on the railway platform by people falling off the platform onto the tracks. Either they were being seriously injured, or they were being it was also leading to fatality, deaths, right? And obviously the establishment in Japan was keen to figure out what's really happening, right? So to cut a very long story short, they did a lot of research, observation, what is happening, spoke to people, started observing really what is happening, why are people falling off. They realized that so a couple of things. People in Japan work very long hours. They get very tired after a long day at work. They would go and enjoy a drink or two. So they were either under the influence of alcohol when they would come here, or they were just very, very tired after a long day of work and traveling very long distances, and they would be sleep deprived or feeling tired. They would sit on the bench while waiting for the train, like this gentleman, if you can see, he's dozed off, he's nodded off a little, right? And whenever there is a sound that a train is approaching, it may be on the other side, or a loud signal of any kind, one would get up. Now, another very interesting aspect is that in Japan, they don't want everybody to know that they're either under the influence of alcohol or they are tired or whatever. So they would start walking towards the train, not realizing that a train is not really coming. It's just a sound somewhere else on another platform. They would start walking. They hadn't gained full consciousness, right? And they would keep walking, not realizing that the platform has ended, and they would overstep and fall off. It might seem very silly that, huh, aisa kaise ho sakta hai? But that is actually what was happening. That people, before they could gain full consciousness, they had overstepped the edge of the platform and they were falling off, right? So now the problem is that people don't realize the platform is ending here. Now, what can be the solutions? Anybody wants to give me a couple of solutions in the chat? What do you think can be possible solutions? Anybody? Very quickly. It can be a wrong answer. I don't mind. Okay. So one of the things could have been that we increase that length, right? So the distance that somebody has to cover bit. So you can keep sending. I'm reading as you are sending. You can keep sending. I can increase the distance. So they will gain consciousness. So maybe the bench and the platform edge should have more steps to follow, so that by the time they reach the edge of the platform, they are awake. They can build a safety door over there, or some sort of a barrier at that, so that nobody falls off. You go and bang into, you just go there. Maybe we can start announcing warnings. Maybe put people to make sure that nobody oversteps. Put signages. All of that are good answers, good solutions, right? But what was finally done? This is what was done. Can you see what is the difference that was done? Here, the bench is parallel to the edge of the platform. They turned the bench around. Now, this lady who's sitting there, who's dozed off, she will get up, start walking, not realizing that, koi train nahi aa rahi, nothing is happening. They will move forward. She will bang maybe into the next bench in front of her and gain consciousness, or she may gain consciousness even before that, right? Simple, based on human behavior, right? Posting barriers, it increases the cost. Increasing the length of the platform, all platforms, all railway stations have to be redesigned. Announcements, already so many announcements happening, people are not listening to it. Putting signages, abhi wo conscious hi nahi hai, they're not in their senses, who's going to read those signages? Putting police, security people, like Niranjana has said, this is simple but great. And why is this? How could they come up with a great solution? All the other options that we listed are also valid solutions. They were able to come up with this great solution, not because of they were thinking creatively, but because they rooted their thinking in human behavior. Right? This is what we mean by taking a people first approach. This example I've used to just give you an idea of what do we mean by taking a people first or a human first approach. So it means that you look at three big boxes. The first is, how well does this product meet their need? Okay, let me give another. So all the options that we had listed, it was meeting the need. Or let me give another example. A door's purpose is to create a temporary barrier between two spaces, right? Closed, there is a barrier. Open, the barrier opens, right? So all doors will meet this need. They meet the function or the purpose of the door. Close when I don't want people to pass through, open when I want people to pass through. Okay, people or sound or whatever it might be. But the next is, how do users interact with it? Is it easy or difficult? Now we have all struggled कि ये door खोलना कैसे? How do I open it? Do I push it? Do I pull it? So a door, all doors meet the function and the purpose, but some doors are not easy to use. And it is not that because the turn, it's difficult, it requires a lot of effort, but because I can't figure out, I'll do two things. We've all experienced it with the bottles also. Do I pull the cap? Do I turn it around? Do I press? How do I open it? How easy or difficult is it for me to actually use it, figure out how to use it? Another example is, how easy is it for me to navigate? My example of the airport. कहाँ से कहाँ जाना है? How do I go from here to there? Right? Or search on an app, like what I was speaking about earlier, the railway booking. How easy is it for me to search for the option that the user is looking for? And overall, how does it make me feel? When I get the first two boxes correct, my next box can tick off most of it, but some of them are also my emotional needs, my desires, my pain points. What do I value? All of that. So all of these three boxes put together, one has to think about when you take a human first approach as an UX designer. And you therefore end up asking a lot of whys, right? So UX operates in this sweet spot in the center, where something that you're creating is desirable for the user, it is feasible, I have technology to make it, it is viable. So that increasing the length of the platform was not a viable solution, right? I could have also said that, can I have sensors on the edge of the platform so that when anybody steps on it, there is a boom sound that goes and it shakes and wakes them up. But we don't have the technology for it. It's also probably going to be expensive. It's going to take a long time to develop that technology. By then, more people are going to die or get seriously injured. So UX operates in this sweet spot. Okay. And therefore we need professionals. If you want to be an UX professional, you need to be someone who can solve human and business problems and create products that don't just look good, but work well for all stakeholders. Okay. And therefore, it is not about, because this is something that I get asked a lot of times. आप Figma सिखाएंगे? Will you teach Figma? Figma is a software. That's not what makes you a UX designer. That's not what makes you a UI designer. Learning how to operate Adobe XD or Figma. And just as learning how to use a scissor and needle and thread doesn't make you into a fashion designer, or learning how to use Excel doesn't make you into an accountant. Learning how to use the saw or and the hammer and the nail doesn't make you into a furniture designer. That is how, for a designer also, learning how to use the software, you will need to learn it because you will do it through that, right? So I have to know how to write for me to be a journalist, but just writing or using a word document doesn't make me into a journalist. There are a few other things that I need to learn, right? So what are those things? As a designer, you need to learn how to be a researcher, you need to learn how to be a planner, you need to become a thinker. Sometimes you will have to think logically, sometimes you will have to think imaginatively, and both are very different types of thinking. You will have to become a maker. All of this thinking that you are doing, you should be able to make. And you have to be a learner, because with every project you learn something about human behavior, and you can use it again and again and again in your next projects. So all of these need to be learned, right? I'm going to now do something which all of us love, is going to take you through a project, actually two projects done by our students. Very, very quickly, I'll do that so that you can see that, how did it work, right? So this is a project by one of our students who's now working for a UX studio in Chennai. So Arumal's project, where he created a platform for game creators, people not who play games, but people who create games for the gaming industry, right? This was done as part of his course itself. This was his final project. And incidentally, it was a live project. So there was somebody who had, who wanted him to develop this app, right? So he created a hub with a game creators hub, which was a community platform where game creators, they can connect, they can find inspiration. So like a Pinterest for game creators, and they can create a community. So like a LinkedIn for game creators, right? Where they can so find their jobs and meet like-minded individuals, right? But focused around game creators. So what? So he was working with 6 developers, which means 6 software coders, and he was the only UX UI designer, right? How did he do? How did he go about it? So all of this I'm going to scroll through, and I'll probably put the link in the chat for you guys to access later. Okay, Shubhangi, will they be able to see it through the chat? Maybe not, I think, you know. Okay, anyways, moving on. What he did was that he started with some research. So he started speaking with recruiters, people who want to hire game creators. He started talking to game creators, what are they looking for? And he was talking to his client who was creating this application, what are their expectations, right? And moving on, so he did his interviews and he started identifying these pain points. What are their pain points? So here is a recruiter who's saying that I want to find the right talent. Somebody else is saying that they are too focused around visuals, leaving us with very limited options for us to showcase our skills, so on and so forth, right? I'm not going to deep dive into it because then it takes a lot of time, right? Then he started thinking about the solution. How did he do that? So these are some of the things that all of us know UX designers do. They create these personas, ideas about people who will be their users, right? They're not real users, but you start writing general pain points about people, their needs, right? So 2-3 different types of users who are going to use this. So it's not just about recruiters and game creators. Within the game creators, there are different types of people who are going to subscribe to this platform. What are their individual unique needs and frustrations or pain points or expectations, right? He also did the same with the recruiters. Then he started listing things that need to be built into his project, right? In the profile section, what is required? In the job section, what is required? These are nuanced things. I'm not pausing and talking in detail about it, but this is what he had to do. In the marketplace section, what do they want? In the portfolio section, what are the needs that is there, right? And all of this is not coming directly. Every user said, "Mujhe ye chahiye, I want this," and he builds everything into it. By listening to the needs of many people, he zeroed in on some common features that will satisfy the needs of a larger group of people, right? Then he started creating his what are known as sitemap, that okay, what exactly, where is, what is going to be the sections on his app, what each section is going to have what inside it, what are going to be my main pages, what are going to be my supplementary pages, right? uh, then he started to define his, so he hasn't put it here, but you define what you call as a, you can see user flows, right? That if there are these 5 things, if a user comes with this idea in mind, he wants to do this, what will be his journey on my application? What if he wants to do this? So he lists 3 4 5 different scenarios which are going to be common scenarios. What will be my journeys as a user when I go through this app, right? Then from there he starts visualizing his wireframes and he does his testing, right? Now when he did his testing, he started identifying problems. So user said this is not working, this felt like this, so he started figuring out these problems, and then he started solving them one by one, right? So these are his solutions, not going into details. Okay, again, another problem he identified. I'm just giving you a window into the kind of work that a UX designer needs to do. I'm not talking in detail about actually what Aromal did, right? So again, more problems, more solutions. And he's shown too, he had to do many such things. Then he's finally, because this is his basically his portfolio presentation, right? Now he's talking about all the features that he spoke about, which came from the user interviews that he did. Now he's telling that you can do customizable public profiles to showcase your skills projects. How are you doing it? This is how the final interface looks. And it's not about looking beautiful. There are many features that make it possible for the user's needs to be fulfilled, the interface to become easy to operate, uh, and all of that. And of course, there is a good design as well, a good visual design as well, right? So every feature has now been brought in, not spending time on discussing it, because then we have to spend 1 hour discussing it, right? What was his strategy at this time? How to create resumes. It generates tailored resumes. You put in your profile details, some things, and then we'll generate this thing for you, and then you can edit it, right? So on and so forth. Then one of the things was that he wanted to use the how can you link it to your LinkedIn? All of that was done, right? So it takes a lot of effort. How many hours? Let's scroll back. I've forgotten. But he's written how many hours? Some 200 hours or something, I think, if I remember correctly, for him to actually create this. So if you're willing to work that hard, then maybe UX is a space for you. Yeah, 250 plus hours, right? To create 200 plus pages. 6 iterations, 6 cycles of revisions he had to do, right? For him to reach the final outcome, which I showed you at the bottom, right? So let's just quickly go there. Yeah, this is what he finally created. And this is what you actually need to learn. It's not about, so that's why every graphic designer cannot do this, or every product designer cannot do this, right? There is a little bit more of upskilling beyond graphic design, product design that you need to do, or as a techie also, you need a little bit of upskilling for you to be able to get into the grind of this. You don't only learn about typography. You are a techie and you learn about typography and color. That's not what a UX designer needs to learn. This process is what you need to learn. There is a way in which you do your research so that you can get these insights. It's not okay, I will ask people and then they will tell me and then I will plan and then I will create, right? Everything gets technical at some point. Okay, so I mean a lot of all of this was done. Let's get back to our presentation in the interest of time. Okay, so therefore I'm not sure how well I was able to explain it, but UX design is not about only research. It's also not about visual design, only about visual design. It is about everything that actually happens in between the two. Because a lot of times people tell me, yes, I know it's not just about visual design. I have to do research. So they want to do research, then they want to do visual design based on research. But actually, in between is where the entire work of it happens. Okay, so you also have to be a collaborator. You should be able to work with, so there are specialized researchers. You don't, as a UX designer, you don't have to do research, but you learn a little bit about research so that you can collaborate with specialists, researchers. Sometimes you will also be able to require to do a little bit of research. You need to work with sales and marketing teams because they are bringing insights. This is what the user is saying. These are the complaints. When I'm selling them, this is what I need to do. We have a competitor who's doing this. So you need to work with sales and marketing teams. You work with other visual designers because you're not a be all. You might need somebody who does illustration, somebody who does motion graphics, somebody who does icon design. You need to work with other visual designers. You need to work with developers or coders who are finally going to codify what you have created, your thoughts. They are going to add the layer of technology to execute the design. So a UX designer's job doesn't happen in isolation. It happens with these, in these 4 levels, in collaboration with these 4 levels, right? Now, just 5 minutes more on when you learn UX UI with and what happens? You learn design beyond software. If you want to do that, if you want to learn Figma, we are not for you. If you want to learn design, you will learn Figma. That's a small part, 5%, 10%, because then only you can create all these screens, etc. But you have to learn a lot of it before that. And we start from the fundamentals, absolutely from the fundamentals. So if you think that you don't want to learn the fundamentals, we may not be for you. You learn by doing. We believe that you cannot learn design by listening and watching. Today you might have felt enlightened about UX UI. You've become aware of it, but you can't become a UX designer by me talking about it. If I keep talking about it, I get better at it. But you can only get better at it by doing. This is what we believe in. So if you want to learn by doing, if you want to learn by listening and watching, please, we are not for you, right? So if you want to learn design beyond software, you want to learn design from the fundamentals, and you want to learn design by doing, then if these 3 boxes are ticked, then and Academy can be that place, right? The other things that that you get when you come with us is a stackability of the course, which I will just talk about. You probably are not sure whether you want to be in the UX UI space. Start small, do the certificate level course. If your interest is there, if you have time, extend, go to the diploma level, so on and so forth. Plus, we don't just stop at teaching you, we also provide career services, which means that we help you. Of course, the biggest career service we provide is in upskilling you. And as part of the course, you do projects and therefore your portfolio gets developed. But career setting needs a little bit more. You need to also understand how to handle interviews. Uh, our career service team guides you in that. If you want, that's extra. They also they put you in touch with recruiters. They facilitate that process of recruitment for you, right? So that's an added thing that you get. Now let's talk about our courses in UX UI design. We have 3 courses, 3 levels: certificate level, diploma level, PG diploma level. So you can start with, look at the right side of my screen. Let's talk about that first. You can start with a 20-week certificate level course. Now what happens in this is that you get exposed to the fundamentals and you understand a basic design process. You will be able to create a simple product, not something as complex as what you just saw from Aromal, but something simpler, standard products you will be able to create. Because but you will learn all the processes and tools and techniques that you saw in Aromal's project. All of that you will learn, but you won't become proficient in dealing with a complex situation like Aromal's project. So the certificate level you become you is a good start off. If you now interest is there and if you want to go further, then you can study for 16 more weeks. After doing the first 20 weeks, you can study for another 16 weeks, during which you do 2 projects like the ones that you saw from Aromal. And that is when you learn all the fundamentals that you have learned. You learn to put them into use into a complex situation. So that's our first offering: certificate or diploma. Continue, start with certificate, go to diploma. The other thing that we have is a PG diploma. Now the PG diploma, so it doesn't happen that you start with certificate, do diploma, then go to PG diploma. For the PG diploma, you have to start at a different level. We start even before the certificate level. We start with foundation in visual design. That helps you in your UI design later, and it also helps you to think visually. Okay, so you can't, please remember, you can't start with certificate, go to diploma, and then ask me to do PG diploma. If you want to do the PG diploma, you start from a different place. It's a 1-year course. Term 1, we don't talk about UX UI, we only learn visual design. Term 2, we do the UX UI fundamentals, and term 3, we do the capstone projects. 2 projects, right? Classes happen twice a week, 7:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. You need to put in equal hours, 6 hours of self-study along with this minimum for you to be able to learn, right? And that's about it, I think. This is my last slide. If you have questions, put them in the Q&A box, not the chat box. You can be a graduate from any field. You have to be a graduate. We prefer if you have some work experience, even if it is internship. It doesn't have to be in design. It can be in any field, but if you have some work experience, we prefer that. But you definitely need to be a graduate. You can also be from an allied creative field. We get people who have done architecture, interior design, fashion design, textile design, graphic designers. We get a lot of graphic designers who want to now get into UX UI. We get a lot of BTech people who are basically, or who people who have studied coding and realize that they don't find that exciting enough, but they want to still work with digital products. So they learn, come and learn with us. If you are a graduate from any field, if you have work experience, not in design, but in, say, things like digital marketing, then that also works, right? It becomes an advantage for you, right? So if you are in any one of these, and if you find what I've shared with you exciting, then UX UI is can be a discipline for you, can be a career choice for you. And if you want to learn design beyond softwares, learn from fundamentals and learn by doing. So it's a lot of effort that you will have to put in. If then you can be at and right. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Shubhangi to moderate the Q&A. Hi, Shubhangi, if you are there.
Hello, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. I can see already that there are a bunch of questions, but this is just a reminder that if you have any more questions, now is the time that you put it in the Q&A box. So we'll begin with whatever questions we have already. Somebody's asking, can I become a UI designer without learning UX?
No.
No.
No. You can. But what you can become without learning UX is a Figma operator. And for that, you don't even need to study UI design.
Yes. Somebody's saying I joined a little late. Can I get the recording of this session? It would be very helpful. Yes. So you'll get an email, hopefully by tomorrow evening, and then this recording will be definitely delivered in your inbox. So yeah. Somebody is asking, do we need to learn graphic design before getting into the field of UI UX?
It's not a prerequisite, but it's a good idea. If you know graphic design, then your work in UI design gets better. And also the other thing that happens is uh, because the wireframing and all of that is part of the part, visual thinking gets polished. So if you learn graphic design, you know how you get out of the head space and get into the space of a screen. That becomes easier. And so I always recommend that if you learn graphic design before doing UI UX, then you are at an advantage. But it is not a necessary, or it's not a compulsion, it's not an eligibility, but it's preferable. And that is what happens with our PG diploma. The PG diploma, 1 year PG diploma, actually does that. It first teaches you fundamentals of visual design. You don't become a graphic designer, but you learn all the fundamentals of visual design, and then you come into UX UI.
Okay. Moving on, somebody is asking what does the certificate course teach? So I think
All the
Prachi has
fundamentals of
already
UX UI.
given a rundown of it, but so that you can
I'll
check out our curriculum, I've also put the link in the chat of our UX UI course page, so you can go out and check out all the details of the curriculum. But please, ma'am, feel free to add.
No, but I would have just repeated. Shubhangi is absolutely right that it is. I mean, everybody. I've already mentioned it, and go to the page, and that's the best way. But you learn all the fundamentals. So you learn the fundamentals of research. You learn the fundamental tools, how to create a persona, how to create a empathy map based on your user interviews, how to draw insights, how to convert those insights into features, how to convert those features into into ideas, how to select ideas that work, how to draw your task flows, convert task flows into wireframes, how to convert wireframes into high fidelity mockups and prototypes, how to do your user testing. You learn all of that, but you are able to, because you're learning it for the first time, and these are all complex concepts, you are only able to apply them in a simple situation, which you have to do first. Everybody has to first learn how to add single digit numbers before they can add double digit and 10 digit numbers. Or you have to first learn how to do simple multiplications before you can do complex multiplications. So that is the learning curve. You do that in the certificate course, then you become ready, and in the diploma level you do the complex things.
Yep. Okay, moving on. Do UI UX designers need to have knowledge about any of the programming languages? Is the next question.
Yeah. So Just give me a minute. What I'm doing is, Shubhangi, I'm sharing the link of Aromal's this thing to you, because I'm not able to share it with the rest of the group.
Okay, just
Yeah.
let's do that. Yeah, I've shared it with
And one
everyone.
more. Yeah, I'm putting two things for you, Shubhangi. You can just share it with everybody. And then I'm back to the question on coding. Just allow me one more minute and I'll answer that question. So a UX UI designer doesn't need to know coding, right? Because a designer's job is not coding. When you get onto the job, when you start collaborating with techies, you automatically start understanding a bit of it. So I'm a, let's say I'm right now I'm the head of academics here. I need to understand academics and all of that, but I also need to understand a little bit about how does budgeting work. I don't need to become an expert at it. I don't need to study accountancy for it. I never studied it. But I need to learn a little bit about it, which I learn while collaborating with people who look after finances. Right? That is the same thing that happens with coding. But unfortunately, what happens is that a lot of times on job sites, they wrongly post so they are called UX developers. People who do coding are called UX developers. So a good studio, a good organization will never say this, but organizations that are themselves less informed sometimes use the wrong terminology, and they say that I need a UX designer when they actually need a UX developer. So it's a problem at that end, but a designer doesn't need to know coding.
Okay, moving on. So this is a multiple part question that we're looking at. Somebody is asking, how is a certificate in graphic design in any way similar to a UX UI certificate, which is the first part of this question? Because through stackability, there's an option to get into the UI diploma or PG diploma in UI UX after graduating with a certificate in graphic design.
I've read through the question. Shubhangi. What you're telling is correct. Beyond that, to explain on in a webinar, I don't want to confuse others.
Yeah. I think the best way is to get in touch with your course advisor, and
Course advisors, they will explain.
They will be able to
They will
answer,
be able to explain.
yeah, your questions in much greater depth. If you have any doubts, please feel free to reach out to them.
Yeah. And the rest of it, once you apply and appear for an interview, you will, when you meet me or one of the faculty members, they will be able to explain. Whatever you have written is correct, and I can't explain more than that in a webinar situation without confusing others.
Yeah. Let's just wait for a minute more if we have any more questions. Otherwise, I think we've reached the end of this webinar. Okay, if you have any questions, I request you to please put it in the Q&A box. Yeah, okay.
See, I've read the question, but you can read it out for everybody else's benefit.
Is it a good idea to learn graphic design before getting into UI UX? Is certificate in graphic design enough for that, or I need to do a diploma in graphic design? Will that be more useful?
The more you do, the better it will be. It's as simple as that. But a certificate is also, so the PG diploma, so you don't have to do a GD certificate and then do a UX UI. Just do the PG diploma, it's enough. But if you do, if you do a graphic design diploma first, then you do a UX UI diploma, that is even better than a PG diploma. So the more you keep doing, it is better. Now the decision is yours कि जितना भी पढ़ाई करोगे वो कोई कम तो है नहीं, बेटर तो है ही है, नेसेसरी है या नहीं, नहीं, PG diploma is sufficient, but if you do more you will be better.
Okay, so Kavya has put a question in chat. I request you to please put your questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat. Kavya is asking, how much does a person get paid on an average in the field of UI UX?
So it's a very, very valid question. But there is no one answer to it. You can get recruited, matlab, salaries, starting salaries can vary from 3 lakhs per annum to 8 lakhs per annum. Okay. But it really depends on how sharp you are and what the strength of your portfolio. Right. But typically, let's say anything between 3.5 to 4.5, 5 would be a reasonable. But people do get hired at 8 lakhs, 9 lakhs as well, right? I mean, I think Arumal's, I can't remember. I think it was 7 lakhs or so, Arumal's salary. But yeah, but I mean, then you have to be sharp. You have to have portfolio, and it doesn't only stop at having a portfolio, because every recruiter puts you through an assessment, right? And if they're if they've put up a job with a salary of 7 lakhs, 8 lakhs, then their assessment is also going to be tougher to clear. And if you're able to clear it, you'll get that. But if you're not able to clear it, then you won't get it. Then they'll offer you an internship, which is going to be half the salary, and they'll train you further. So I don't want to give one answer to it. So anything from 3 lakhs to 8 lakhs, but broadly, generally, average 3 to 4.5 lakhs as a fresher, you can think. And then it'll depend on how you perform, and then your growth will come from there. The growth in UX UI comes after 1 year of working in it. In fact, I always encourage people to do an internship for about a year, at a stipend, not a free internship, at a stipend. You should get compensated for it. So it can be anything like 25,000, 30,000, 35,000 per month. Do that. It's a great, because you will learn more. The first job is always an extension of your course.
Okay, great. Seems like we've reached the end of questions for tonight. Thank you everyone who stuck around till the end of this webinar. Thank you, Prachi ma'am, for this wonderful presentation. It's always delightful to see student work. Yeah. With that, okay, so I would like to mention that our courses are beginning in the 3rd week of March, which is 23rd of March is our orientation. So if you're wanting or looking to apply for a UI
22nd of March is the orientation.
22nd. I'm sorry. I misspoke. 22nd of March is our orientation. So our applications will be, you'll be eligible for applications for applying for a UI UX course right before that. So feel free to reach out to your course counselors. They'll be able to answer your questions in much more depth. And if you're wanting to apply with Anne for a UI UX course in this coming batch, now is the time that you do it, because courses are going to begin soon. So we are hoping to see you in class soon. And with that, I say bye and good night. I hope everybody had a great time and they were able to learn something about UX UI design and about Anne. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Bye. Good night.